Hi, everybody. This is Troy Hopkins. I'm the Director of Undergrad Career Counseling at the Rockwell Career Center for the CT Bauer College of Business. And today we're going to talk about demystifying resumes from the basics to a little more advanced topic. So, why does your resume need to be as close to perfect as possible? We may have heard this before, but on average, recruiters will look at your resume for 8 seconds. Now, that's not saying every time they look at a resume, it's going to be for 8 seconds, but some resumes, they're going to spend a lot longer than 8 seconds. Others, they're going to look at it and right away know it's not a good fit for them, and we'll move on to the next one. So, you have to make sure that everything that you have at the top, especially, is as close to perfect as possible. And we're going to talk about how to do that. So, some must haves to keep you in that safe space to get you beyond that 8 seconds. Your resume has to be consistent in its formatting, it has to flow from the top to the bottom, it has to be front loaded, especially when you're talking about the bullets. In terms of the way that they are structured and the sentences and the fragments of sentences that you have in your bullets, how they're loaded. And it has to be incredibly keyword heavy. If it's not keyword heavy, then it doesn't relate as much to the next job that you would like to have as much as possible. Okay, let's start with consistency. This must have is about avoiding distractions for the reader. Things that are inconsistent, like the way you're abbreviating Texas. If it says TX at the top, it shouldn't say Texas spelled out through the rest of the document and vice versa. See this a lot. Um, if you're abbreviating, keep abbreviating. If you're not abbreviating, which is I tend to do for months, is I do not abbreviate months because you generally have enough space to write out the entire month. Write it out, but also don't list for non-academic projects. Don't list fall and spring, and then go back and list a month for something completely different. Now there are, like I said, exceptions to that. Academic projects that run a whole semester can work if you put like fall 2021, things like that. But your graduation date, for example, is specifically for a month. So it should say month, it should say like May 2023 or something like that. One of the reasons for that is because a lot of recruiters are recruiting all over the country, and fall 2022 may end in December for some universities. It may end at the end of November for others. So putting that month in there tells them, hey, this is when I can do an internship up until this point, but after that, I want a full-time job. Listing a job as being from May 2020 to current on one line and then present for another. I tend to prefer present, and most of the employers I've ever talked to prefer the word present instead of current. So that's what I would go with, but definitely don't mix them back and forth. And then using different styles of bullets, like a round one, and then a square one, and then a long dash and a small dash or whatever. Those kinds of inconsistencies will start to drive people crazy after a while. And then mixing up fonts, all in the same document. This happens most frequently when someone copies and pastes something like a LinkedIn URL. You've got Times New Roman for the first couple lines, and then all of a sudden it's like Arial or something like that, or Calibri. Make sure all your fonts are exactly the same font and same size, with the exception of your name at the top, which should be a little bit bigger. Here is kind of a sample resume, and hopefully you can see at least a couple of mistakes here just from go. Take a couple of seconds here just to review this and look for as many mistakes as you can find. Here's one. You don't need your full address on a resume, and in fact, it's quite dangerous. You don't need to tell me it's a mobile number. You just list the phone number that you're actually going to answer. Most employers would prefer that you put a zip code after the city. You don't need this dash. It's not part of the number format. You don't need to tell me this is an email. I kind of can tell it's an email. In addition, this is not a professional email address, hustlerbaby@gmail.com. In addition, your objective, you don't need to tell me that you're looking for a reputable company unless I'm a shyster. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'll go somewhere else. Where I can increase my business acumen and expand the corporate paradigm, okay, one, that's gibberish. It doesn't make any sense. It's a lot of fluff. And two, as a recruiter, honestly, I don't care what you're going to get out of it. um, I'm really looking as a recruiter, what do you need? Like, what are you trying to get next? Like, what? Give you some specifics. Like, are you a supply chain major looking for an internship in supply chain? That helps me. In addition, like this anticipated spring 2023, it's not the way we format it, and it should be set out to the right here. Okay, this one's a little bit better. The objective is incredibly direct, and that's exactly what I'm looking for if I'm a recruiter. If you're going to put an objective, and honestly, if you are putting your resume somewhere where it can be read without you having control over it, an objective might be a good idea. If you're planning it somewhere like on Indeed or LinkedIn even, and it's not really apparent, like just looking at your resume what you want, then the seeking a finance internship might be a good way to go. Keep it really simple though. And so this formatting is really, really good. For those of you that have a LinkedIn profile, and if you don't, I would highly recommend that you get one. If your LinkedIn URL is not very simple like this, if it's got a bunch of, random letters and numbers after it, go on your profile, click on your name, and then look on the right-hand corner where it says custom URL. You can change it and make it a lot simpler for people to find and follow. Okay, let's look a little bit more down the path in terms of some things to look out for. This is an example of a very kind of basic resume in terms of the way the bullets are structured out here. But you also notice a couple mistakes here. Employment history, we tend to go with the word experience rather than employment history. The reason for that is if you end up doing an unpaid internship, which we're not huge fans of, but if it's related to what you want to do, like for example, let's say you are a supply chain major and you go do an unpaid internship with a nonprofit and you're doing a lot of supply chain work, that's still good experience. And so I'd want you to put it in the experience section, but it's not employment. And so we don't want you to kind of fudge the way through that and make it employment if it's not. So experience is a better header here. You also notice this is really common. You've got what looks to be an odd format here for the dash and a space. So I would either just go no spaces and a small dash or a space before and after. In terms of what's written here, you'll notice this is past tense. It happened all the way up until April 2021, but they've got present tense here in terms of some of the verbs like handle, manage, answer, and then as a mix of calculated, insured, it all needs to be past tense. And so it makes more sense if this is a past tense job for all these verbs to be in the past tense as well. And again, it has to flow. So the human brain gets bored really quickly and will get off track quite easily, like the Doug from Squirrel. So it must be directed from point to point. So the next point using bullets in order to keep that attention of the reader. In addition, bullets should be used to start a new item, followed by more bullets with concise information, keyword dense to convey marketable skills. So that's the reason that we do the bullets the way we do. And so again, when you're looking at the resume and we talk about it being front loaded, you'll want the most relevant thing that you did is the most important thing for what you want to do next. And so it should be first. And so list those most relevant skills, knowledge, and abilities, what in HR we call KSAs, as the first bullet of each new job or experience as you're going backwards. So handle transactions fast and accurately. We'll play with that wording a little bit. Again, we've got still this mistake here. At least it's past tense where we go. So we're getting a little better as we move forward here. And so what we've seen in the past resumes the examples that we looked at so far is task-based bullets. So a basic resume is task-based. Now, at the end, we'll talk about the most important thing that you can be at this point is mistake-free. So if you have a basic resume that's task-based, but 100% objectively mistake-free, you're okay. Especially towards the beginning of your academic career, if you haven't done any internships yet, there's nothing wrong with that, having that basic task-based resume. A more advanced resume should be the goal, where it's more results-oriented, showcases the achievements, and is relevant to your future roles, especially what you want to do next. And so it also should be very keyword heavy. It should be tailored to be as relevant to your next job as that you want as possible. The keywords that are applicable to that job are absolutely critical. And so you should try to get there as much as you can. So here's an example. We've cleaned it up a little bit in terms of the formatting even. So calculated total payments received via cash and credit transactions and reconciled payments against total sales. That's running a cash register. It's just said in ways that are more aligned in business language. So proficient in the use of point of sale technologies, including barcode scanners, cash registers, telephones, receipt printers, and debit credit card readers. So again, more business language in terms of like, yeah, it may be just running the front of the store, the point of sale part of a cashier, but there's a lot more skill involved there, obviously. Perform physical count of inventory and reconciled stock count to computer-generated reports, and answered customers' questions and provided information on store policies in a high-volume environment. And if you're like, hold up, let me pause this video so I can steal all this language, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. You can find resume action verbs on hirebauer.com, the Career Center website that utilizes a lot of this language or whatever. But if you want to borrow some of this language, there's nothing wrong with that. We definitely have have the technology for you to borrow some of those terms. So feel free to find that on our website, those resume action verbs, along with a lot of other resume help to walk you through to do some of the stuff on your own. So let's look at maybe an audit internship job description, because the job descriptions that you want to do in the future will definitely help you with the language that you should be using in your resume, even based on the skills that you have right now. So we've got things like assisting in revenues and expense reports, reconciling revenues and expenses and ensuring accuracy, compiling, analyzing financial transactions, identifying discrepancies in financial statements, performing special projects and reporting data, and performing fraud investigation and identifying fraudulent behavior through audits. And so if you've got skills that are listed like this in the skill sections, like able to manage great customer service, well, okay. Able to manage physical inventory counts. And again, we've got some things like this formatting. Really, if you're going to use periods in your resume, use periods, but be consistent for sure. So this is fine, but I would rather have you like front load the skills that are most important. One, pretty much everybody in school right now is fluent in English, so it kind of goes without saying. So let's change that up a bit. So fluent Spanish, Microsoft Word, Excel, including Pivot, XLOOKUP, VBA, and macros. If you're deep in Excel and you know those skills or whatever, show them off for sure. Outlook, Access, PowerPoint, Adobe Photoshop. In Finale, inventory software. There's a specific inventory software that if you are really good at inventory or you use inventory in a retail, that may be one of the ones that you've used. So if you know a particular brand of software, talk about it. So Finale inventory software and barcode scanning hardware, point of sale software and hardware. And if you know one in particular, you can go ahead and use it in your resume. So again, back to some resume must-haves. It must be consistent. It must flow throughout the document from top to bottom. It has to be front-loaded, especially in your bullets, and those bullets have to be keyword heavy. So again, your basic resume is going to be task-based. The more advanced resume is the goal, where it's results-oriented, showcases your achievements, is relevant to your future roles, especially the next one you want, and uses those keywords and action verbs. And most importantly, no mistakes. Now, as you guys are watching this video, the next goal should be getting you to no objective mistakes. And by that, I mean to leave here completely mistake-free. And so objective mistakes are inconsistencies, like your dashes don't match, or your abbreviations don't match, or you're using abbreviations at the top but not the bottom, or your periods, you're using punctuation at the end of sentences on this line but not the rest of them, or whatever. Inconsistencies are just objective mistakes. So everyone would agree like you're inconsistent and that is a mistake. When you're talking to professionals or recruiters or things like that and getting their feedback about your content, they may give you subjective opinions, and that's fine. A lot of opinions are going to vary a little bit. Some recruiters may say, hey, I really would like to know how many hours a week you worked while you were in school. Some employers may not care about that at all. And so it's those subjective things that are not necessarily mistakes. They're just things that that recruiter likes to see on resumes. And so make sure that you're getting your resume first to mistake free, and then you can start looking for feedback based on more of the subjective stuff. So unfortunately, I'm not there to answer your questions tonight. But if you have questions, make sure you're talking to your officers, especially when they're helping you get your resume to mistake-free status. And then definitely reach out to your alumni folks within the organization and the folks that have come to the event to help you out by looking at your resume. Thanks very much. Have a good night.